I'm going to start by taking us back in time to 8 o'clock in the morning on September 8th, 1975. My little 6-year-old heart was pounding, and my hands were shaking, and I was holding on really tight to this brand new Holly Hobby lunchbox. I was standing outside this big blue door, afraid to go in. It was my first day of first grade, and all summer long, my 7-year-old brother Michael kept reminding me, "You're not ready for first grade." And in my heart, I knew he was right. So just when I thought, forget first grade, I'm running back to the safety of my old kindergarten classroom, the door opened. And on the other side of this door was the most beautiful young woman. She had long, straight brown hair, and she looked like an angel in this white bell-bottom pantsuit. And she bent down and said, "What's wrong?" And I looked up at her and I said, "Michael said I'm not ready for first grade because I can't read, and I practiced all summer, but I still can't do it." And she just smiled. And she said, "You're in luck. Teaching kids to read is my specialty." Her name was Nancy Russell, and her impact on my life is undeniable. And I know you're picturing Nancy Russell in her white bell-bottom pantsuit, and here she is, my beautiful Mrs. Russell, and me sporting that really fashionable 1970s Dorothy Hamill haircut. Anybody else have one? Yes. Okay, young people, we're going to explain Dorothy Hamill to you later after this. So that year, because of Mrs. Russell's patience, persistence, and creativity, this highly anxious, dyslexic kid learned to love reading. And I grew to love everything about first grade. My confidence grew, and the next year I strutted into that second grade classroom with a new attitude and a new lunchbox. Charlie's Angels. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, who had one of these? So I'm going to take us back to the beginning, to another big blue door. But this time it was 2012, and again I was feeling anxious and afraid to go in. I got a call from the superintendent in my assistant principal position, where I was very happy, and she said, "We'd like you to apply for the principal job down the street. It's a struggling school. You'll be their third principal in 3 years, but I know you can do it." So when the superintendent calls, you say yes. And I went to the school to meet the faculty, and by the time I got the courage to push open that blue door and walk inside and look at the faces of the teachers I would lead, I was surprised when I recognized a familiar face. Now, she did not have long, straight brown hair anymore, and thankfully she was not wearing a white bell-bottom pantsuit. But Mrs. Russell had the same encouraging smile. And it happened so suddenly that we were surprised to see each other. And after that faculty meeting, she came up and she hugged me, and she stepped back and looked at me and she said, "I'm so glad I taught you how to read." And I said, "Me too." And I got to spend the next 3 years reconnecting with my first grade teacher and watching Nancy Russell do what she does best, making kids feel safe and seen and stretched, just as she had done for me. And here we are in 2012, my first grade teacher and her principal. And Mrs. Russell taught for 40 years, and she was just excited in year 40 as she was the year she taught me in first grade. And now I travel around the country talking to groups of educators And whether I'm talking to professors on college or university campuses, or whether I'm talking to teachers and administrators in schools and districts, my message is always the same. And it's the same message I have for you today. You are someone's Mrs. Russell. You are the person that will change a student's life. And I challenge you, when you go back to your school on Monday, to just stop for a minute and look at the students you serve. And really think about how to make them feel safe and seen and stretched. And push aside for a minute the pressure to raise their achievement scores or the pressure to make sure they meet that standard. And just think about their stories and who they are and who they could become. Because you never know where your students might end up. And maybe one day, one of your students will end up standing on a stage talking to hundreds of educators about you. Thank you.